everyone, welcome back to the dinner table. It's been a long week, a busy week, work, school schedules, the usual chaos, and the family hasn't really sat down together to eat a home-cooked meal. But tonight is Fancy Dinner Friday, and it is the one night a week that we set aside to sit at the dinner table and eat a home-cooked meal as a family together. What makes it fancy? Well, mainly I make like one main dish meals throughout the week, like spaghetti, maybe it'll have garlic bread with it, or like a sheet pan meal. But for Fancy Dinner Fridays, I cook one main dish, sides, and a dessert. And then I also serve everything on reserved dishes. They're not fancy, but they're fancy in that I only use them for our Fancy Dinner Friday. I actually got them at Goodwill and was lucky enough to get a whole set of matching dishes, a set of 4. So I set those dishes specifically aside for our fancy dinners, and it makes it a little more special. But in reality, dinner with the family doesn't have to be fancy or over the top extravagant. It really just needs to be intentional. And that's really the goal that I'm trying to achieve here. So tonight's menu is coming from Paula Deen's Lady and Son Savannah Country Cookbook. Just like my dishes, I get most of my cookbooks from the Goodwill, and I got this one out of the Goodwill bins. But for the recipes I picked tonight, they are specifically recipes that she served in her restaurant in Savannah, Georgia, and she has little marks in this recipe book that designate which recipes were from the restaurant. So I purposely picked just those recipes for tonight. So on the menu, we have cheeseburger meatloaf and sauce, broccoli salad, Savannah red rice, hoecakes, and cream cheese brownies. I'm estimating the cook time to take about 2 hours. There are 3 dishes that will go into the oven. 2 of them cook at the same temp. And one of the dishes, the broccoli salad, I'll be able to put into the fridge. So that is what we're having tonight for Fancy Dinner Friday. Let's get started. So it's the next day after Fancy Dinner Friday, which was last night, and it was definitely an experience. So I want to kind of talk about, was it worth the effort? I don't think that the menu worked out the way I had hoped for, and honestly, that's part of the experience, especially since we're trying new recipes from vintage cookbooks. Not all of the menus I pick are going to be winners. One big thing I would change and I would pay closer attention to is how the dishes are cooked. 3 out of 5 of the dishes I made were needing the oven. And even though I tried to cook multiple dishes in the oven at the same time, I ended up having to separate them because it was prolonging the cook time. And I ended up spending most of the afternoon in the kitchen rotating dishes out so they could cook. So by the time dinner was ready, I was exhausted and almost completely forgot to make the cheese sauce for the meatloaf. Another lesson would be being more realistic on what my family will actually eat. Pick dishes that I already knew that the boys were going to hesitate on. And even though they did say that the food was good, their body language said something totally different. I think they were being more polite than enthusiastic over how good the recipe actually was. For example, Jake really likes vegetables. He is our vegetable eater, but he likes vegetables in the simplest form. He likes broccoli steamed with butter, salt, and pepper. He does not appreciate vegetables being mixed into a casserole type dish or a salad. So I think next time I'm going to pick simpler recipes, not so complicated ones with like less ingredients per dish. Or I'm going to find ways to adapt the recipe so that it's more appealing to the boys. As far as the individual dishes go, I don't think that I'll be remaking any of these recipes that were on the menu. Not even the cheesecake brownies. Okay, I might try the brownies again with a simpler version, the lady brownie recipe without the pecans. That's probably the only recipe that I might make again. But sad to say that most of the dinner is probably going to go to the puppies because leftovers aren't going to be eaten. My husband will take care of the meatloaf and probably the broccoli salad, but the rest of it will probably go to the dogs. The biggest disappointment wasn't really the food, it was the conversation. Instead of a relaxed, casual, meaningful conversation, most of the conversation was just about the food and how it was, texture, flavor, etc. So I think next time I'll pick simpler recipes, budget my time, and figure out ways to initiate more meaningful conversations. If you're on a quest, like me, to find recipes that my family will gather at the dinner table for, subscribe and we can figure it out together. Until next time, I'll see you at the dinner table.